Good afternoon. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
My name is Edwin Kagin, K-A-G-I-N. I'm the National Legal Director for American Atheists.
And what types of things do you do as the legal director for American Atheists?
Well, for one thing, I decide what types of cases we take and what types of cases we do not take. We have lawyers from various parts of the country who serve as local counsel in cases. I'm licensed, for example, only in the state of Kentucky. If I were to handle a case in other states, which I have done in the past, such as Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, lots of other places, it's necessary to get local counsel there who then request that I be permitted to work on the case for that one thing only.
What are some of the main issues that you see that are, in terms of how it impacts the actual functioning of the government more so than religious freedoms that you see are on the horizon or that are present right now?
The overwhelming thing is the number of fundamentalists who are in positions of power in the government. If enough of that occurs, eventually we will not have a free country, and that will just somehow have merged from our democracy, which we have, into a theocracy, into something we don't want. If some of the views of fundamentalists on such matters as creationism, or what they retooled it as to call it intelligent design, if that were to catch hold in a generation, we could be back in another dark ages, because they reject the method of science totally. You know, they don't like it. It doesn't fit faith. It's a deductive reasoning, not inductive as science would be.
Recently, and I believe that it was it in your home state or your neighboring state that the legislature just passed the academic freedom bill as it's touting it?
No, I hadn't heard that. When did that happen?
Well, actually, it was in the House. I believe it was in Kentucky.
Right, and what they mean by academic freedom is that they can teach intelligent design.
Well, what they're saying is that the teachers can teach the controversy.
Right. Okay.
And so I'd like to get your thoughts about being able to teach the controversy.
There is no controversy. As I said earlier today, that intelligent design is not the opposite of evolution. The opposite of evolution is ignorance. There is no controversy to be taught, and they're trying to make out like there is a controversy, but no such thing exists.
So how do you feel these bills basically a Trojan horse to...
Well, it's stupid in the first place. There is no such thing as academic freedom in the secondary schools. That's a concept for colleges and universities, just for openers.
Actually, even beyond colleges, mostly
right.
universities,
right,
because colleges really are...
And what they are is clearly an attempt to legislate religion, to have religion taught.
How they're getting smarter. They started with intelligent design, and then there was the Kurtzmuller versus...
They started with creationism.
Well, they started with creationism.
Right. Then it morphed in the Dover case.
Right.
That you're speaking of, Kurtzmuller. They call it intelligent design, but in their book on the panda, it was proved in the trial by some of the best people in the country, by the way, that they just simply changed the word creationism to intelligent design every time it appeared.
And now they've morphed into academic freedom.
Right.
So
and
how
to
do we...
teach the controversy? What you've got to do is just continue to call them. I don't care what you call it, it's still the same thing.
But how do you, from a either community activist point of view or from just someone who wants our students to learn valid science, how do you fight that? How do you see stepping out of your role as fighting things in the court and the legislature? How do you see fighting that as individual parents?
You do as they did in Kansas. When Kansas did that, they voted them out of office at the next election. This is an occasion where political action is needed more so than legal action. Legal action might or might not work, but if you can vote the rascals out of office, you no longer have the problem. You recall Kansas required the teaching of, and that's what inspired the flying spaghetti monster religion. A fellow physicist, I think, sent a very complex thing to the Kansas Board of Education saying, well, the intelligent, or the flying spaghetti monster ought to be taught as well, and it was the same type of argument exactly.
Right. Now, earlier today, during your talk, you mentioned that you have a 100% success rate, and that's laudable. The question is if I was, as a surgeon, had 100% of the patients that I operate on for appendicitis had appendicitis, that would mean I would be missing some patients that I should be operating on. And so the question is do you feel that you have missing cases that you should be taking because you're being so selective?
No. The difference is that your intervention is needed to save their life, perhaps. In the case of not taking some of these cases, the result would be, if we took it, there would be appellate decisions binding for everybody that would be against us, where at the moment there may not be such a holding. And it's extremely hazardous to take a church-state issue that you cannot strongly win on and take it to an appeals court that might well codify that into precedent and into binding law.
Can you give us an example or two of where this happened?
Litigating one nation under God. It's the national motto. That's, and I don't want to criticize anybody. It's just the type of case I would not have taken, because I would think it would not prevail, as it did not. The case on President Obama concluding his oath of office was "So help me God." It's true that that's not in the Constitution, but the people who are critical of that could run for office themselves, and if they got elected, they could say, and I love Mickey Mouse, or whatever. Who's going to tell the president he can't add a little something to his own inauguration speech? And the courts threw that out when it was litigated.
But as proof text of the specific thing that you said, that if you have bad appellate decisions, that can have a bad impact.
Oh,
do you have some examples where a bad appellate impact 10, 20 years down the line ended up having a bad impact?
Okay, in our Kentucky Homeland Security case, they are using some of the cases we've just been talking about, the type of cases that should not have been taken, which now have made bad law, and they're using that as precedent against a much more meritorious argument. In other words, they're sort of dismantling the wall of separation, stone by stone, brick by brick. And what we got to do is very carefully put it back together again. Many of the cases that have made bad law would have been much better handled as a political action, where you go lobby the legislature, carry signs, but even if it fails, it does not have the long-range potential for harm that some of these adverse opinions have had. Okay.
What do you recommend the average listener out there to do to keep up on these issues?
Most of these things are covered on the internet. You can just punch in some key words. For example, my arguments in the Kentucky Homeland Security case, you simply type in Kentucky Homeland Security case appeal, and YouTube perhaps, Kagin if you like, Kagin, and you can get a whole string of these things. There's a great wealth of information online.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Now.